Good Friday evening. Welcome to Alaska Weather. I'm meteorologist Amanda Bowen. Thank you for joining us this evening. As always, those numbers and website and email address at the bottom of your screen are your best ways to get a hold of us or get a forecast outside of our show. That number, 1-800-472-0391. You can call anytime to get a recorded forecast for your area. You can also visit weather.gov/Alaska if you have internet access to get the latest 7-day forecast for your exact location, as well as plenty of other weather and climate data if you're interested. And as always, you can email us anytime at nws.ar.tvweather@noaa.gov if you have any comments or feedback for us. We don't have anything in the way of hazardous weather products out quite at this point, so we'll move on to looking at something that happened yesterday. We got some lightning strikes both in the Anchorage area as well as near Prince William Sound yesterday. Now, although there was more lightning in the Prince William Sound area, we're going to talk about that one lightning strike that happened in the Anchorage area. And that's because that lightning strike puts the Anchorage airport at 7 recorded thunderstorms for the year 2020, which is just one short of the record since records started being kept back in the 19 teens. So 2005 had 8 thunderstorms at the Anchorage airport, and this year 2020 we have 7. So if Anchorage airport records one more thunderstorm this year, we'll tie that record, and 2 more thunderstorms would give us the most thunderstorms that Anchorage airport has had in any calendar year back to when records began. So we'll be keeping an eye on that today. We don't have thunder in the forecast for the Anchorage area for today, but it can't completely be ruled out, kind of like yesterday afternoon. So we'll be keeping an eye on that, and we'll keep you updated in the coming shows. Taking a look at our latest satellite imagery for today, we've got a weak low pressure system associated with those clouds in the Aleutians. We also have some moisture flowing into the southern panhandle, although the northern panhandle could actually see some sun today. In fact, in talking to the Weather Service office in Juneau, they said the sun did come out today for the first time in quite a while. So a nice day for the northern panhandle today. We're also seeing sunny skies over southwestern portions of the state, as well as some sun in south central. Clouds over the interior for one more afternoon of potential isolated thunderstorms across the eastern interior, associated with what we're seeing in the satellite imagery as those clouds probably between about Fairbanks and Northway on the map. Taking a look at today's surface chart, like I said, we've got some weak low pressure systems over the interior portions of the state. The one over the eastern interior near the Canadian border is going to help with the forcing to potentially produce some isolated thunderstorms over that eastern interior area. We're also looking at continuing afternoon and evening showers for much of the rest of the eastern half of the state. Low pressure over the northwestern portion of the state is weakening. So the last couple of days we've been talking about the potential for some higher water on northwest facing coastlines. That's less of an issue today and going forward now as that low pressure weakens and ultimately ends up dissipating. High pressure over the southwestern portion of the state is bringing those dry conditions and clearer skies there. And then we have our weak low pressure over the western Aleutians. That's weakening right now even further and looks like it's going to dissipate pretty quickly, but not before bringing some more rain and showers to the Aleutians. For tonight, we've got those lows, those weak lows that were over the interior dissipating pretty much at this point. So mostly high pressure over the western portion of the state, which means that we're going to see some fog development tonight all the way from the Bering Strait and the Yukon Delta up the Yukon River all the way to the Canadian border, as well as some fog development along the north slope tonight. So make sure that you're aware for foggy conditions if you are out tonight in those areas. High pressure going to bring drier conditions to the Alaska Peninsula and the northern Gulf Coast. And in fact, we could see some fog development over the northern panhandle where we were talking about there's actually been some sun today. So clear skies, maybe bringing some fog to the panhandle tonight. We start to see tonight that next strong low coming up out of the western Gulf and the northern Pacific. We can see it just on the bottom of our graphic here, 980 millibars tonight. That's going to be moving north and impacting the Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula first as we head forward in time. So speaking of that, looking at Saturday's weather, that low looks like it's going to weaken just a little bit, but still remain a big player in the weather, bringing breezy conditions as well as plenty of rain to the eastern Aleutians and Alaska Peninsula on Saturday. Rain spreading into the Bristol Bay area for Saturday with that low pressure system, and then a warm front stretching most of the way across the Gulf and possibly even bringing some rain to the extreme southern portion of the Panhandle for Saturday. We've got high pressure still in command for a little bit longer over the northern Gulf, so it looks like another dry day for the south central area as well as southeastern mainland and much of the Panhandle on Saturday. We do still have the chance for some showers over much of the interior, with fog maybe not going away completely for the eastern North Slope as well as portions of the west coast, including the northern Seward Peninsula on Saturday. Sunday is going to be our big weather day again. It seems like we were just talking about this last weekend with Sunday being the big weather day. So we're repeating that pattern once again this week. We have our, at this point, strengthening again low pressure system back down to 980 millibars, centered just north of the eastern Aleutians for Sunday. So that's going to be bringing plenty of wind and rain into southwestern portions of the state, with that rain stretching all the way up into south central. With southerly winds on the east side of this low, we do expect a Chinook event in the Alaska Range passes. So if you have plans to travel through the Alaska Range, be prepared for high winds. We don't have any actual high wind warnings or watches out at this point, but stay tuned to our show tomorrow. We'll have updates from the Fairbanks and Anchorage offices about any high wind products in effect with this low pressure system expected to impact the state mostly on Sunday. Taking a look at temperatures, low temperatures for Saturday morning. For the Panhandle, we're going to see the warmest low temperatures there, upper 40s to around 50 degrees. We'll have those warmest lows for the southern Panhandle, where we'll still see some cloud cover. A little bit cooler for the northern Panhandle, where not as many clouds means better cooling. Cool temperatures over the rest of the state, with 30s for the North Slope and the Brooks Range, even some 30s across the interior. And I think probably the first 30s that we've seen for the South Central and Kenai Peninsula areas for Saturday morning. Saturday afternoon, we definitely have our warmest temperatures in the Panhandle, where even though they're not labeled here, we could see some temperatures up into the mid to upper 60s for the northern Panhandle, along with some sun. Elsewhere in the state, we're looking at mostly 50s from the northern Gulf Coast all the way up to the Brooks Range, with 40s for the North Slope. Sunday morning, not a whole lot of change is what we're seeing. We still have those warmest temperatures in the Panhandle, with upper 40s to around 50 degrees. We'll also see some upper 40s to around 50 as that low pressure system starts moving into the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island areas with that cloud cover there. Not so much in the way of clouds over the interior, so we'll see cooler temperatures there with some mid 30s maybe for the first time across the Yukon River. And finally on Sunday afternoon, warmest temperatures once again in the Panhandle, but we'll rebound into some low 60s for portions of the interior and staying cool with that low pressure system over southwest Alaska.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to aviation weather. Flying weather for Saturday morning, mostly VFR conditions over the state, although we do have some IFR conditions over the eastern portions of the North Slope, as well as around the western Aleutians. MVFR conditions for the west coast up into the Bering Strait, as well as the Chukchi Sea, and portions of the northern Gulf looking like MVFR conditions on Saturday morning. For Saturday afternoon, we have IFR conditions developing in a number of places, including across most of the Aleutians as well as the southern coast of the Alaska Peninsula. Some IFR conditions pushing into coastal southern panhandle areas, as well as IFR conditions developing from St. Lawrence Island north through the Bering Strait and into the Chukchi Sea. For Sunday morning, we see IFR conditions in many of those same locations, including the southern Alaska Peninsula and eastern Aleutians, portions of the rest of the Aleutians, as well as the northern Bering into the Chukchi Sea. Also IFR conditions developing over the northern Alaska Range, as well as the eastern Brooks Range for Sunday morning. Sunday afternoon, we see some improvement over the mainland, but we'll also see IFR conditions continuing to push north into the northern Alaska Peninsula, as well as coastal southwestern Alaska. IFR conditions continuing over the Bering Strait, as well as much of the Aleutians, but VFR conditions from the Yukon River down through southeastern portions of the mainland and the Panhandle for Sunday afternoon. Pass conditions on Saturday, Anaktuvuk Pass VFR, Adigan Pass starting the day VFR, but deteriorating to MVFR Saturday afternoon. Lake Clark and Merrill Passes both VFR on Saturday, Rainy Pass MVFR on Saturday, Windy Pass starting the day MVFR and actually deteriorating to IFR conditions Saturday afternoon. Isabel Pass MVFR on Saturday, Mentasta Pass VFR on Saturday, as well as Tanita Pass VFR on Saturday, Portage Pass VFR, as well as Chilkoot and White Passes both expected to be VFR on Saturday. Freezing levels for Saturday morning, we have one area of warmer air pushing up from the southeast into the Panhandle. So there we'll see freezing levels anywhere from 6,000 to 10,000 feet across the Panhandle itself. Over most of the mainland, we're looking once again at freezing levels around 4,000 feet, 2,000 feet over the Chukchi Sea and Beaufort Sea mostly as well though. We're looking at 6,000 feet over South Central and then increasing as we head south into the Gulf. Icing on Saturday, a number of areas of isolated moderate icing. We've got above 8,000 feet for the northern tier of the state, although over the Chukchi Sea, it looks like that isolated moderate icing above 6,000 feet, and then above 9,000 feet for the central interior of the state. And for most of the Aleutians in the Alaska Peninsula, isolated moderate icing above 7,000 feet. Jet stream winds, we don't have a lot of high and low pressure systems to speak of with the jet stream graphic, but we do have one jet stretching from the eastern Kenai Peninsula across the Panhandle, 100 to 115 knots out of the west. Our strongest jet is almost off the screen and associated with a low that is south of where our map covers right now, but that jet is going to be west and south of the western Aleutians, ranging from about 95 to 130 knots out of the north and northeast. 9,000 foot winds, we're still seeing our main winds across the Gulf area and into the area south of the Panhandle in British Columbia. So 40 to 65 knots out of the south and southwest for the southern Gulf. 50 knots out of the west, just south and east of the Panhandle, and our jet that's almost off the map just south of the Aleutians, 50 knots out of the northeast. 3,000 foot winds, we're starting to see at this level our next low pressure system coming up into the Gulf. So north of that low pressure system, we have our peak winds 70 knots out of the southeast. Other than that, we have some stronger winds 20 to 40 knots over the Aleutians and a peak of about 30 knots just south of the Panhandle for Saturday at 3,000 feet. Looking at turbulence, with that low pressure system pushing north towards the Alaska Peninsula and those strongest winds on the north side of that low, we do have some isolated severe turbulence below 4,000 feet possible over the Alaska Peninsula for Saturday. Stay tuned for more Alaska weather after this.
Why is plastic marine debris so common? We know there's trash in the ocean. Unfortunately, a lot of it is plastic. We find plastic everywhere, from the ocean floor to surface. The plastics are all shapes and sizes and all different types. We find plastics on beaches, and also inside animals' stomachs or wrapped around their bodies. That's bad news for our ocean and the animals that live in it and near it. It's also bad news for us. A recent study from the University of Georgia estimated that 8 million metric tons of plastic trash enters the ocean every year. That's like putting 5 bags filled with plastic on every foot of coastline in the world. That's a lot of plastic in the ocean, and it's there because, well, we put it there. The 5 most common items found during the International Coastal Cleanup are plastic cigarette butts, food wrappers, plastic beverage bottles, plastic bottle caps, and plastic straws and drink stirrers. Notice anything in common with those? It's a lot of single-use, disposable plastic. It goes without saying, we produce too much waste. That waste ends up in the ocean when we litter or don't recycle. Plastic is an important part of our modern lives. We use it for a lot of good things. But we need to take responsibility for how much we use every day and where it goes when we're done with it. The 3 R's can help, and it's up to every single one of us to practice them. Reduce your use of disposable plastic. That's anything you use once and throw away. Just use less. Reuse disposable plastics when possible. A plastic bottle makes a great coin piggy bank or watering can. The possibilities are endless. Recycle anything that can be recycled so it stays out of landfills, where trash can blow away. Ocean plastic is a huge problem that's only going to get worse. Unless we change our ways, we can do better for the ocean and for us. Why is plastic marine debris so common? We know there's trash in the ocean. Unfortunately, a lot of it is plastic. We find plastic everywhere, from the ocean floor to surface. The plastics are all shapes and sizes and all different types. We find plastics on beaches, and also inside animals' stomachs or wrapped around their bodies. That's bad news for our ocean and the animals that live in it and near it. It's also bad news for us. A recent study from the University of Georgia estimated that 8 million metric tons of plastic trash enters the ocean every year. That's like putting 5 bags filled with plastic on every foot of coastline in the world. That's a lot of plastic in the ocean, and it's there because, well, we put it there. The 5 most common items found during the International Coastal Cleanup are plastic cigarette butts, food wrappers, plastic beverage bottles, plastic bottle caps, and plastic straws and drink stirrers. Notice anything in common with those? It's a lot of single-use, disposable plastic. It goes without saying, we produce too much waste. That waste ends up in the ocean when we litter or don't recycle. Plastic is an important part of our modern lives. We use it for a lot of good things. But we need to take responsibility for how much we use every day and where it goes when we're done with it. The 3 R's can help, and it's up to every single one of us to practice them. Reduce your use of disposable plastic. That's anything you use once and throw away. Just use less. Reuse disposable plastics when possible. A plastic bottle makes a great coin piggy bank or watering can. The possibilities are endless. Recycle anything that can be recycled so it stays out of landfills, where trash can blow away. Ocean plastic is a huge problem that's only going to get worse. Unless we change our ways, we can do better for the ocean and for us.
What is the Great Pacific Garbage Patch? Well, first, let's talk about what it's not. It's not a floating island of trash like a garbage dump or a landfill. It's also not the only patch. They exist all throughout the ocean, and the Pacific Garbage Patch just happens to be the most famous. Garbage patches are large areas of marine debris concentration that are formed by rotating ocean currents called gyres, kind of like big whirlpools that suck things in. A garbage patch is made up of tiny plastic pieces called microplastics that are less than 5 millimeters long. It's more like pepper flakes swirling in a soup than something you can skim off the surface. You might come across some larger items like plastic bottles, but it's possible to sail through a garbage patch and not see anything. And they're a big problem for the ocean and us. People often ask why we can't just scoop up all the marine debris in the ocean. And the answer is, unfortunately, it's just not that simple. The first challenge is the sheer size of these garbage patches. They're huge. They're constantly moving with ocean currents. And there's debris from the ocean surface all the way down to the sea floor. Not to mention all the marine life we would disrupt if we tried to just scoop up debris. So what can we do? Well, the ultimate solution is prevention. And we need to keep that as our highest priority. We can reduce, reuse, and recycle to keep trash out of the ocean in the first place. And we can participate in things like shoreline cleanups. It's a lot easier to deal with debris before it gets to the ocean. Because until we stop marine debris at the source, we'll just be cleaning it up forever.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back for a look at your marine forecast. Starting with the sea ice edge, there's not a lot of change in the picture for today. We are noticing that there is a large area of open water very far north. It's that really low concentration ice we've been talking about, up to almost 80 degrees north. So at this point, it looks like all of the navigational waters are going to remain ice-free for at least the next month or so. Taking a look at southeast winds and seas for Saturday, we've got relatively light winds, 10 knots over the Gulf with about 4-foot seas, and 10 to 15 knots over the inside waterways with just 2 to 3 foot seas. We had a little bit of a hiccup with our graphic here on Sunday, but all of the numbers that you see are accurate. So we're looking at 10 to 15 knots of wind out of the east and southeast for the Gulf, 3 to 4 foot seas, and some north to northwesterly flow for the inside waterways, 2 to 3 foot seas there. For south central on Saturday, relatively light winds and small seas, 10 to 15 knot winds, and just 3 to 4 foot seas over the Gulf, with around 5 foot seas in the south portion of Cook Inlet. But that changes as we head into Sunday with our strong low pressure system headed into the Bering. This will be on the periphery of those strong winds, so we expect winds out of the southeast and east 40 to 45 knots on the north side of Kodiak Island and the south side of Kenai Peninsula, 25 to 30 knots elsewhere further north from there into the northern Gulf, still 10 knots out of the northeast in Prince William Sound and 20 knots out of the northeast in northern Cook Inlet. We'll also see those seas coming up along with the winds, 12 to 13 foot seas where we have those strongest winds on Sunday. Saturday for the Alaska Peninsula and Kodiak Island, we're starting to see the impacts of that strong low pressure system passing right through this area. So we'll see winds increasing to 45 to 50 knots out of the east, seas increasing along with those 21 to 26 feet on the immediate south side of the Alaska Peninsula. Winds also increasing on the north side of the peninsula, 30 knots out of the east for Bristol Bay, 40 knots out of the northeast for the north side of the southern Alaska Peninsula, and seas on the north side at 6 to 11 feet. Heading into Sunday, that low will have passed by at this point, so winds are staying up to some extent, but not as strong as what we will see on Saturday. So winds around 30 to 40 knots, so still strong out of the south and east in general. Seas coming down a little bit, especially on the south side of the peninsula, 12 to 14 feet. For the Aleutian chain on Saturday, the Aleutians are mostly on the western periphery of this storm for Saturday, so we have our strongest winds south of Unalaska, 40 knots out of the northeast. Also our highest seas there around 19 feet. Elsewhere, winds and seas decrease as we head west. So 7 to 9 feet generally on the north side of the chain, with 20 to 25 knot winds out of the east and northeast. Heading into Sunday, we'll see those winds come up a little bit on the north side of the chain, on the backside of that low, to about 30 knots. And seas coming up certainly on the north side of the chain as well, to 13 to 16 feet. Smallest seas and lowest winds in the western Aleutians on Sunday, 20 to 25 knots and 6 to 11 foot seas. For the west coast on Saturday, this will be ahead of that low pressure system, but we'll still have some strong offshore flow, especially off the Kuskokwim Delta, 35 knots out of the northeast, 25 knots out of the northeast near the Pribilofs, just 10 knots out of the northwest though for Norton Sound. 2 foot seas in Norton Sound, increasing as we head south into the Bering to about 8 feet. And winds and seas both increasing on Sunday, 35 to 40 knots out of the east for most of the area, seas increasing to as much as 15 feet. For the Arctic coast, 15 knots across the board pretty much. Easterly flow for the north coast and westerly flow for the Chukchi Sea. And then 10 to 15 knots out of the south for the North Slope on Sunday, 15 to 20 knots for the Chukchi Sea. Into tonight, we're starting to see that low pressure system approaching the Alaska Peninsula, so that's what we can be keeping an eye on for the next couple of days. Thanks so much for watching Alaska TV Weather.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal, pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.